You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Sunday, December 17th, and the 49ers just clinched the NFC West with another sweep of another NFC West team, the Arizona Cardinals. Big win. The 49ers had a season high of 45 points, and the Cardinals, because of some last minute garbage time touchdown, they got 29. But joining me to talk about this win is Josh Harper. Josh, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. Can't complain. The Niners clinched. So, what more can we ask for to this point? So I'm feeling good, doing great.
Exactly. Everything is good in 49ers land. Now, as I mentioned, I'm feeling a little under the weather, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a go. Greenlaw Mooney Ward said, you know what? We're going to give it a go. They were dealing with some injuries this past week, but it was Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave who were out for the interior of the defensive line. Now, going into this game, Josh, I think the way I expected this to go was, you know what? Not having both of those guys in the interior is pretty huge. So I was kind of expecting that the Cardinals would have some success on the ground in this game. Now, of course, Kinlaw's been having some good games to this point. So I was like, maybe they'll be fine with Kinlaw. But then in the game, Kalia Davis as well, he goes out with an ankle injury. And so, man, they're really hurting in the interior of that defensive line. And we kind of saw it unfold in this game, right? The Arizona Cardinals finished with 234 rushing yards on 7.8 yards per carry. And a lot of those came on big chunk runs where we saw a lot of missed tackles, poor effort. This wasn't Fred Warner's best game. But of course, we got to look at those injuries on the interior and feel like there is a direct correlation there, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're missing Eric, I feel like Eric Armstead is like the glue to that line, right? Like he's the run stopper. He's the big dude in there. And Hargrave, he's not known for his run stopping ability, but he's a big piece of stopping the run. So when you're missing two of your starters in there, I know that Kinlaw, he's been playing well, but he's been on snap counts, right? He's not just in there, for the full game. So that's an adjustment that he's going to have to learn how to play the whole game. He's been good in spots this year, a lot better than he has in the past. But again, when you're missing Armstead and Hargrave, you're bounded to give up more rushing yards than you would when your starters are there. But I didn't think it would be this bad, especially to a Cardinals team.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit and how these injuries could impact them going forward. But I mean, the 49ers won. Let's get on a positive note, right? For the defense, Mooney Ward, who didn't practice all week, he came away with not one, but two interceptions in this game. He now has 4 on the season. And I thought it was pretty cool because this past week, he joined Eric Armstead's podcast talking about how he feels he's like the best corner in the game. And if he could just get those interceptions, maybe other people would see it too. So he kind of called his own number on this one and came away with 2 interceptions. He also had, I think, a pass defense as well. Looking at the stat sheet here. One of those interceptions was a pick 6, right? So that definitely helped get the 49ers onto a big start right away. What did you think of Mooney Ward's performance in this one?
Oh, man. I mean, so Mooney, he's really good. He's a good corner, right? And the only thing that we've been missing are those splash interceptions, those pick sixes that we see from a lot of the top guys. And I don't know if you saw me tweet out, I'm like, man, I didn't know Mooney Ward was that fast. The way he grabbed the ball and just, took off with it. We've been missing those type of plays from our defensive backs for I don't know how long. Hufanga is pretty good with, interceptions and doing something with it, but we haven't had a corner in a long time, make a pick and take it to the house like that. So it was lovely to see as a fan. I'm happy he's healthy because I know he had groin issues, but man, I agree. I think he's one of those. He's one of the top corners. But those picks are the only thing that's that he's missing, and it was good to see him at least get two and one to the house. Put everybody on notice.
For sure. Hopefully we see more of those in the future. But I had the same thought, right? Like
Mhm.
he had a few guys in front of him, of course, when he made that interception. And at one point he just hit a second gear. And I was like, wow, like I didn't know he went that fast. So I immediately went to next gen stats just to see like if they had the numbers of his
Mhm.
speed. And sure enough, for week 15, they had him up there. He reached a top speed of 20.64 miles per hour on that pick six. So dude was scooting. He was
Yeah.
scooting out there and he showed the wheels. So yeah, definitely. But I also want to talk about Delmador Lenore because he had a great game in this one. Of course, like last week he had to play outside. This week he was back in the slot, and I thought he had a great game. He had 9 tackles, a tackle for loss, a pass defended. He was involved in a lot of different ways on the pass plays, run game as well. And so I think this is something we've been seeing from Lenore the past few weeks, but I just don't think it's being talked about enough, just how good Lenore has been, and he was awesome in this game.
Yeah, I agree. And Lenore was one of those guys in the summertime. I just wasn't sure like what we were gonna get from him. And he's definitely showed me that we can definitely trust him on the opposite of Mooney. If Mooney goes down, we can trust him to shadow the number one receiver. We can trust him to go into the nickel and play that role and play it really well. So I'm very comfortable with Lenore, whether that's at the nickel position, whether that's shadowing the number one receiver. He's had a hell of a year so far, and I think he's just going to continue to build upon it. Yeah, I like what I see from Lenore. He's a baller. He's a baller.
Yeah, for sure. Something to keep an eye on, though. We already talked about some of the injuries the 49ers are dealing with on the defensive side of the ball. Add Lenore to that list.
Mhm,
Unfortunately, it seems like late in the game, he had a rib injury. So
mhm.
he was quickly ruled out, of course, at that point. Like the game had already, been won.
Yeah.
But something to keep an eye on because he did look like he was in, pain on the sideline and he was taking off his pads. So
Mhm.
something to monitor. I haven't seen any updates yet. Like Kyle Shanahan hasn't spoken with the media. I'm sure we'll get that here shortly, but again, something to keep an eye on. Hopefully he's okay. The 49ers do have one extra day of rest.
Mhm.
But obviously a big game next week, taking on the Baltimore Ravens, who look great as well. But let's get to the offense because the offense, they scored 45 points in this
Yeah.
one, and that's kind of how I expected the game to go for the offense. Like, yeah, I was a little worried about the defense, and I was like,
Mhm.
that's a lot of guys missing on the defense, or just important guys missing. But I was like, I don't think there's anything that the Cardinals can stop
Yeah.
with this 49ers offense. And that's kind of been the story for the last few weeks for this offense. And we see Brock Purdy have a hell of a game, homecoming game for him. Let's see, he was 16 to 25, 242 yards, 9.7 yards per attempt, 4
Mhm.
touchdowns, passer rating of 135.3. Not a bad day in the office for Brock Purdy and this offense, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I watch a lot of football on Sundays and Saturdays and Fridays, and I haven't seen an offense click like this in I don't know how like forever. I haven't they click on all cylinders. It starts with McCaffrey. They're feeding McCaffrey. He's gonna do what McCaffrey does. And then you have Purdy. He's making every single throw. He's a point guard out there. He's getting it to Debo. He's getting it to Ayuk. Kittle's he's been balling these past couple games. And when they're all clicking together, they're unbeatable. I mean, like Purdy made a throw to Debo up the sideline.
Oof.
It was such a
Back
beautiful
shoulder.
pass, back shoulder where nobody can get it but Debo on time. I mean, this offense is scary. I mean, they could literally average plus, 30, 35 points a game. I don't think anybody can stop them. It's really up to them executing, staying penalty free, but they have too many weapons on that offensive side, and Purdy is just dealing it. He's the MVP. He's the MVP. I'm saying it now. He's the MVP. It's
So
unanimous.
I mean, that was kind of next question, right? Because
Yeah.
look, I think going into this week, it was Dak, it was Tyreek Hill, it
Mhm.
was Purdy, and I
Mhm.
put McCaffrey in the conversation too. I don't
Yeah.
think he's getting enough love
Mhm.
nationally in the conversation, but he deserves to be in there too. Well, Dak Prescott playing the Bills,
Mhm.
they just lost to the Bills 10-31, and Prescott didn't have any touchdowns in that game, one interception. So yeah, I think Purdy, looking at the stats
Mhm.
that he had in this one, Tyreek Hill, of course, not didn't play for the Dolphins. So yeah, I think Brock Purdy gave himself a leg up in the MVP race. And what's crazy is, so he has 29 passing touchdowns on the season.
Mhm.
That's most by a 49ers quarterback since Jeff Garcia in 2001.
Mhm.
So that's just crazy, right? And Purdy's
Yeah.
been doing this. Like, he has these records that he's been breaking. And yeah, I agree. I think the performance he put on today is MVP worthy, right? Because he was already in the conversation, but all of the different things we saw from the other contenders and
Mhm.
Brock Purdy, I think, tell me he deserves to be the MVP. There's a few more weeks left,
Yeah.
but this one definitely helped. I mean, the throws that he's making, you mentioned the back shoulder one, that
Mhm.
was a thing of beauty.
Yeah.
I think also the one that he threw to Christian McCaffrey, McCaffrey was wide open, but that's because the defender came down because Purdy had escaped the pocket
Mhm.
and he was on the move. So he came down because his eyes were on Purdy. And I know they mentioned that on the broadcast as
Mhm.
well. So that's like, that drive right there was all Purdy.
Yeah.
And so I think it just shows the impact that he has on this offense. But McCaffrey as well has been awesome. He went over 100 yards today. And it's his 11th game this season with 100 or more yards from scrimmage. That ties Roger
Man.
Craig for the most such games in a single season in franchise history. And then it's crazy too, because McCaffrey's doing this. He's breaking like franchise records. He hasn't
Mhm.
even been with the team all that long.
Right.
But this is just, it's an embarrassment of riches that this team has right now.
I agree 100%. McCaffrey deserves to be in those talks, but you know how the NFL is. It's going to go to the
Yeah.
quarterback. But I wish it was some way for, like, not to take anything away from Purdy, but if they split the MVP trophy or something, because they are equally as important. It is crazy how good Christian McCaffrey is. He's balling. He's making every single. He's breaking records left and right, just like Purdy. But yeah, they're my 1 and 2 for sure. 1A, 1B. But in the NFL standards, Purdy's definitely going to win the MVP. Fingers crossed, injury free, all that. But yeah, McCaffrey, man, we can't just leave him out like that. He's an MVP candidate as well. He's a baller, dude. Like he's a
Yeah.
baller for real.
I definitely agree, and especially against the Cardinals, he has 7 touchdowns against the Cardinals this season,
Yeah.
and him and Raheem Mostert are tied with 20 total touchdowns on the
Mhm.
season. That's like most for non-quarterback, which is crazy. But yeah,
Mhm.
that's, look. The crazy thing is, or I guess the cool thing is that if Brock Purdy were to get the MVP,
Mhm.
I just know, like, when he gives a speech or whatever it is they do, Brock Purdy would say, like,
A
this
team
is an
award.
award for my team. Yeah,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
this is us. This is McCaffrey. This is, because that's the
Yeah.
kind of player that he is. So I think that would be pretty cool. But yeah, I mean,
100%.
as it stands, it's a good feeling to know that the 49ers are this good on offense, this dominant. I saw this crazy, well, I guess it's not so crazy, but hold on, I'll share my screen really quickly here. There's a tweet that from Kevin Molina. He says Brock Purdy is 205 yards and 1 passing touchdown away from 4,000 passing yards and 30 passing touchdowns. Deebo Samuel is 41 yards away from 1,000 scrimmage yards. Kittle is 135 yards away from 1,000 yards receiving. And Christian McCaffrey is 3 touchdowns away from matching Jerry Rice's franchise record for touchdowns in a season. Again, embarrassment of riches. Like, this is crazy. And it's crazy because they can easily, I think, all do this in
Yeah.
like the next few games here before the
Yeah.
season ends. So this is just something historic, I think, we're seeing from the 49ers offense. And yeah, it feels like they're hitting a peak. right now. And there's nothing standing in their way. I think you mentioned like injuries. That's pretty much the only thing. There was a scare in this game with Brock Purdy dealing with like they said a shoulder. I thought it was like a head injury at first because it looked like a helmet, but Purdy entered. He only missed a few snaps there. And I think we saw right away, like Darnold not able to operate the offense quite the same way, right?
Right.
We keep getting told like anyone could do this, but that's not really the case.
Yeah. Let's not forget about Kyle too. He's in his bag.
Yeah.
And when something and this is what I love about Purdy, when something doesn't work, Purdy is there to rescue it. I don't think we've had that in the past years with 10, but he rarely doesn't work with Kyle and his play calling right now. But when it doesn't, Purdy is there for the rescue. He's mobile and he's getting the ball out down the field, escaping the pocket. These things, that's what's making this offense like unstoppable right now.
And that's what Purdy doesn't get enough credit for. Like he does create plays off schedule. He does single-handedly make things happen for this offense. Like, Kyle does dial up a really good play, almost every play is perfect. But, when things don't happen the way they're supposed to or expected to, Brock Purdy is able to create in his own right. And that's just something we've seen, but he's not getting enough credit for. So hopefully, people kind of pay more attention to that. But yeah, man, I mean, this is crazy. To kind of one last talking point here that I want to discuss. And I know a lot of people were mentioning already because they saw the run defense kind of spiral in this game. We talk about the injuries. So if Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave, let's just say, aren't available next week, I mean, that's a possibility, right? The 49ers, like I said, they have one extra day going into that Christmas game. I think John Lynch has said when it's a night game, it feels like it's another day, right? So like it happens at the end of the day. So you really feel like as a player, you get even an extra day more of rest. So, but if those guys aren't available, going up against Lamar Jackson and that Ravens offense, that would be very concerning for the 49ers, right?
Yeah, and I know that, the Ravens changed their offense up, but they're still a run-first offense. They're going to give Gus the ball. They're going to give that rookie the ball who's, he's an explosive guy, and you got Gus who's the bruiser. And, Lamar has, spread it out more where he's able to throw the ball around, but it still starts with the run. So without Armstead and Hargrave in there, it's going to be tough. Hopefully they're healthy and hopefully they're ready to go. But if it's going to cause any like long term or if there's a chance to risk injury for a longer time, don't risk it. I feel comfortable with this team that they can go on the road in the playoffs if they need to and and get a few wins. But it would be nice to have this team 100% fully healthy, especially in the trenches for this game. Which is it could be a Super Bowl preview. Both teams are pretty good and pretty dominant in their respective rights. So hopefully they're ready to go.
Yeah, I hope so too, but definitely something to keep an eye on through this week. I think it's still a little too early to start having that conversation just because, hey, like, I mean, this game just finished. There's still a whole week and a day to go, and those guys could potentially be available. We just don't know yet, right? So a little premature, but something we're going to keep an eye on throughout the week. And of course, we'll talk about, Brock Purdy and his MVP campaign throughout the week as well. But for now, guys, I mean, enjoy the rest of your Sunday because this was a hell of a game. And I'm ready to watch Sunday Night Football. But make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. Make sure you follow Josh on Twitter, jharp2. Make sure you follow me, Steph49K. But for now, have a good rest of your Sunday night, folks. Peace.